All right, we're now Genesis 47. We got into this last time. We started at the kind of finishing up Joseph's story with his family, and now there's the story will continue. The focus will shift away from his family now onto what's happening in the rest of the world and the rest of the land of Egypt as the famine continues. So last time, if you remember, Jacob and his sons travel to Egypt, and at that time, do anyone remember how many members of Jacob's family moved, settled in Egypt? Do you remember the number?
70, 70.
70, indeed. It was 70. Just a perfect number for them. They come into the land, they settle in there. And how are they treated by Pharaoh when they come?
Very well.
Mm.
Very well. They get the best of the land. He even hires them, even though the Egyptians despise them because they're shepherds. They get the best of the land. He even sees if any of your brothers want to take care of my flocks, we can do that too. And then he even has a scene, a very touching scene with Jacob, where Pharaoh speaks very personally to Jacob, and Jacob says, "I've been, sojourning here 130 years, and but they're few compared to my fathers." And then Jacob blesses Pharaoh. And it's just a very sweet scene. It kind of really brings a nice conclusion to that story so far there. So we'll pick it up now in verse 13, Genesis 47, verse 13, and let's just start there. And Elizabeth, would you read for us?
Sure.
Go down 13 to 19, and I'll give you fair warning. I will be moving the screen, so just be aware of that. So
Okay. 30. No, it ended at 17. Is it going to be going on?
it's going to go down to 19 on the next page there. So I'll keep it.
Oh, I
I'll
see.
screen up when we get there.
Okay. Now there was no food in all the land, for the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan in exchange for the grain that they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when the money was all spent in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? For our money is gone." And Joseph answered, "Give your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange for your livestock if your money is gone." So they brought, I don't have any more words.
Go.
Thank you. Okay, let me find it out. So they brought,
Up.
Right top,
and give you,
right up here.
oh, thank you. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the herds, and the donkeys. He supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock that year. And when that year was ended, they came to him and followed the following year and said to him, "We will not hide from my Lord that our money is all spent. The herds of livestock are my Lord's. There is nothing left in the sight of my Lord but our bodies and our land. Why would we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for food, and we with our land will be servants to Pharaoh. And give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate."
Okay. So let's go through this. Just get a sense of the observations of what's happening here. So the famine just continues, and what's the results? How are things looking in Egypt and the land of Canaan?
Everybody.
It's bad. Okay. In
Yeah.
Egypt,
Understand why Joseph, being such a righteous man of God, wouldn't give them food. Why he took everything they had
Ah.
for him.
that's a good question. Let's go through that a little bit
He
here.
was in Egypt and he was of the world at that time.
Well, part of it is it's not his money he's dealing with here.
Mm.
This is not about he's doing his job. So let's talk a little bit about what happens here. So what's the first thing that happens? The famine continues in Egypt and the land, and it's so severe that what's the first thing we're told in verse 14?
Joseph gathered all the money.
Okay. So the people basically give up all their money to buy food
Mm,
from Egypt and from the land of Canaan. And so this famine is so severe that they run out, that they just have to keep coming back, and there's just no more money. Okay.
mm.
So what happens next? If they don't have money, they're starving. When the money was all spent, what do they do?
Livestock.
Yeah. People then give their livestock. All right. But their livestock to him. And he gave them. Okay.
And their livestock is their future.
Their livestock, yeah, their possessions there, what they have. So he'll take their livestock from them, and he gives them food in exchange for that. And then they run out of livestock. And so what does he do?
Give them
Give
their
them their
land.
land and became slaves to them.
So it was their idea. Why should we die before your eyes? Both we and our land, buy us and our land for food. And we, with our land, will be servants to Pharaoh. Give us seed that we may not die. So the people sell themselves
Mm.
and their land into Pharaoh's service.
I don't think they had much of a choice in that, Pastor.
Nope. It's interesting to read this because first thing you notice is like nothing's free, is it?
No.
There are no handouts. There's no welfare here. But on the other hand, it's like, look, Joseph is been given a duty to. This is Pharaoh's grain here. This belongs to him. They've been saving it up, and the people. So it's interesting because Pharaoh gave the order to store up grain based upon Joseph's situation here. I'm curious about the people that they didn't think to store up grain also during that time is one question too. So in any case, they run out and they come to Joseph. All the world's coming to Joseph. And I don't want to get into the morality of what he's doing because I think that's going to miss the point of it. In fact, you would argue that Joseph is actually being very kind to them, that he is looking for ways to take what they've got to provide for them, not just shutting them down and sending them home, but he's willing to do that. And you're going to see in a second the terms of their service. So let's move on to the next part because the terms of what does it mean when they sell themselves and their land into Pharaoh's service? What does that actually mean? And it'll tell us in the next paragraph a little bit more about that. So why don't we skip to the next paragraph and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more. Verse 20 to 22. Liz Provinus, would you read that for us?
Sure. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt from Pharaoh, for all the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was severe on them. The land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he made servants of them from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had a fixed allowance from Pharaoh and lived on the allowance that Pharaoh gave them. Therefore, they did not sell their land.
Okay, again, it reiterates the final point. So the buildup of this part here is to show us how it came to this point that all the people of the land of Egypt, so all the land of Egypt, Joseph buys all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. So all the people sell their fields because the famine was severe. The land became, notice again, the land became Pharaoh's.
Mm.
That's the clear emphasis of this story. It's like this is about how Pharaoh is going to take possession of all the land, and the people became servants, made servants of them from one end of Egypt and became Pharaoh's servants during this time. Everybody except who?
Priests.
That is everyone except, and why didn't the priests become slaves and why didn't they lose their land?
Because
got
they
an
were getting a,
allowance.
they got
Yeah.
a stipend from
Yeah.
Pharaoh.
Who lived on their own allowance from Pharaoh. Okay. All right.
So Pastor, this is the Egyptians and Jacob's family, right?
No.
No.
The
No.
Egyptian.
Just the Egyptians. We've already been told what became of Jacob's family. They're living in the land of Goshen and they're doing all right. They're not coming to Joseph selling their livestock. He's the one who gave them everything. So they're doing fine. Israel, Jacob and his family are doing fine.
If you
They're
think about it, they're even getting more work out of it because now Pharaoh owns all these other animals. And he's asked them if I can hire them to take care of his animals.
Yeah, that's going to be an important point we're going to make in a second here. So it's like there's a distinction now between what's happening to Jacob. We've been told what's become of Jacob's family. They move from Canaan and the doors are flung open for them. They're given the best land. They're taken care of. And meanwhile, the rest of the country of Egypt is they're over time now becoming servants of Pharaoh. They're losing their land and property, so forth.
You got to believe that they're getting a little bit irritated about, the Israelites living there, like without any burden compared to them.
I don't think they're not. They're not. And the reason is there's only 70 of them there. They may or may not even be aware of their existence at this point. But also it's like they're actually thankful. Let's read on. They're not upset about this. Teresa, do you want to read the next paragraph, 23 to 26?
Sure. Then Joseph said to the people, "Behold, I have this day bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Now here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And the harvest you shall give a fifth to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for the field, and as food for yourselves and your households, and food for your little ones." And they said, "You have saved our lives. May it please the Lord. We will be servants to Pharaoh." So Joseph made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt, and it stands to this day, that Pharaoh should have the fifth. The land of the priests alone did not become Pharaoh's.
So Joseph says, I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh. And what does that mean? What does that mean for them, practically speaking?
They're slaves.
Are they slaves though?
Well, he says servants because they're given grain to grow, which I know they're still in this famine, but apparently they can get some growth out of the ground.
Yeah, look at what he says to them. Do they give up their land?
They're still Pharaoh owns it, but they're still living on it and they're still
And
taking
working it.
care of it like it was still theirs.
They are still living on and working their land. Okay? Nothing's changed. He doesn't kick them out of their houses. He doesn't drive them out of the country. They're still living on and working their land, right?
And he gives them seed.
Joseph gives them seed for the field, right? And then what does he say? What does he require of them then? What does it mean then if they're still living on and working their land and he gives them seed now?
They have to pay 1/5 to Pharaoh and the rest of it's theirs.
Yes.
They give 1/5 to Pharaoh. What do we call that? Giving 1/5 to Pharaoh?
Well, it's like a tithe, really.
What would we
Tax-
call
Double
it?
tithe.
Taxes.
That's our taxes, right? So-
Oh,
It's
yeah,
funny
yeah.
that it's 20%, which is twice the religious tithe.
yeah.
It's like they're
But
paying
it's
rent.
less than we pay in taxes.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's not a bad deal. I mean, 20%
No.
tax is like, you know, I pay, what do we pay for Social Security? Like 15% for Social Security? Just
Mm,
that alone, you know?
Yeah, I think because it's like, I think it's 6.5 from you and 6.5 from your company, so there's 13%. Yeah,
And then you pay a tax anytime you move a dollar from one place to another, you got to pay tax on that. Sales tax, there's property tax, there's car taxes, there's like,
There's breathing taxes.
yeah. I mean, this is actually pretty, this is not, this is pretty soft actually. It's only 1/5. So again, but he's not writing this to, but you're going to see in the passage, even as he is purchasing, there's a generosity, kindness to Joseph. This is not overburdensome at all. In fact, they are thrilled. Look at what
yeah,
they said.
and if you think about it, it's not Pharaoh making these decisions. He's given this all to Joseph. So, yeah, they must
I have
like him.
saved our lives. I mean,
I'm seeing something here, Pastor, and I could be out to lunch. It's
Yep.
been a while since I read this story in detail, but I have a tendency to look it through the types.
Yeah.
And just we'll see where the story goes. Like I said, it's been a while since I read this, but I'm thinking Pharaoh is kind of picturing the father. Joseph is kind of picturing Christ. We know he's a type of Christ. We see the chosen people getting a great deal in Goshen, but somehow what we would say weren't originally the chosen people, like the Gentiles, are getting are getting a good deal.
I'm with you on that, Rob. That's where I'm kind of heading with this as well. It's like,
The world is being blessed.
yeah, this is what you're seeing is there favoritism toward Israel? Absolutely. Absolutely. What do we call undeserved favoritism?
Grace.
Great.
Base.
Right? So there is the grace of Joseph. Let's put it, the grace of Pharaoh through Joseph for his family. And then there is, I'm going to call it this, the justice of Pharaoh through Joseph for the world. Because he is not unkind to the world here. He is not taking advantage of them. In fact, there's no freebies for them. They have to earn it. That we call that justice. That's fair, right? There's no handouts. And if you're going to complain about it, you know, that's fine. It's like the parable of the workers in the field, where the one guy works for 1 hour. Remember that? And he gets paid a full day's wage. And the first guy agreed to work for a full day's wage the whole day, gets the same amount, and he complains about it. And what's the answer of the master to him when he complains? How can you give him as much as us? We work the whole day.
I can do whatever I wish with my money.
What's that again, Jack?
I can do whatever I wish with my money.
Exactly right. It's my money. I'm not being unfair to you. I gave you
Yeah,
exactly
you were
what I
treated
promised.
fairly. You were
I gave you
treated,
exactly
you were
what I
given exactly
promised.
what, yeah.
And if I'm gracious to someone else, that's not your business. It's my money, isn't it? I can do whatever I want with it and give it. By the way, Elizabeth, that was the one parable that my Uncle Aram hated more than any other as a union guy. It was so unfair.
I know. That's right. Absolutely. I know.
Drive him crazy.
That's
And that's
true.
this is how it is. It's like there is nothing. Joseph is not at all immoral. He is doing right. He is treating the people fairly. In fact, very fairly.
Yes, he is.
He is not abusing them. He's not oppressing them. He's not taking advantage of them. And they are happy because they're getting, it's a just settlement.
You said recently in one of your sermon series that Christ, the Son, honors the Father, and the Father loves the Son and gives everything to him. This picture is shining through between Pharaoh and Joseph.
Yeah. And the benefactors of the story, this is such a shocking story because Joseph's family does not deserve the grace they're receiving. They
Mm.
do not deserve this. It is all grace, especially the brothers do not deserve this treatment from Joseph and from Pharaoh. But because of Joseph and they're right with him, they get everything. And so it reminds me of what does Jesus say about what does he say? He says you will know the truth and the truth will set you
Set
free.
you free.
And they said, we talk about free. We have never been slaves to anyone. We're children of Abraham. And he says, anyone who commits a sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not dwell in the house forever. The son dwells forever. So if the son sets you free, you will be free indeed. And so you have these two categories here. We have the sons, the family of Joseph, and you have the subjects of Joseph. And the subjects, the servants, they're owned by Pharaoh. They will just get justice. They do not they don't own the land. They're now they belong to Pharaoh, but his family now have been set free by Joseph, and they enjoy the benefits of it all, which is that's how the Lord is through Christ. It's like we are his people, and we don't deserve the grace he's given to us. And yet here we are.
This is one piece of the puzzle I'm missing here, is that before they came down and are living with Pharaoh, they had servants and handmaids and people working for them. Now, when they've come down here, they've only talked about the family, but I have to believe they brought everyone else with them as well.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the 70 mentioned there are just really the boys. They don't mention all the girls they've been brought with them too. They only a couple girls are mentioned, like Dinah and a few, but it's pretty much just the men that are mentioned in the 70. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There are those not mentioned in that group that would have come down with them too. But they want to focus on this. The 70 is that great number. It's like, it's a complete number. It's the number 7 is God's number. The number 10 is a complete number. So it's the point is that it's all of Israel is now in Egypt. There's no remnant remaining in the land of Canaan. We're all there. Everyone's accounted for.
In the end, he saved them all with seeds. Little hint for us all, seeds.
The gospel seeds, yeah. And if you're looking for economic things, you want to look for other side lessons in this. I just find it interesting that there is such a dignity in the way that he handles the situation. Just as a side note, which really doesn't have anything to do with the story so much, but that there are no freebies here. There's no handouts. There's a dignity in this, so that he finds a way so that they can still pay for this. So they've earned it, but it's a gracious thing. So it reminded me of my mom when she used to run the thrift shop at the church, and she'd raise money and she had a rule: no hand. If you're gonna come here, I don't give clothes away. You have to buy it. Now it'll only be a quarter or 50 cents, but I am not giving it to you for free. You're gonna pay for this. And her reasoning was it preserves the dignity of the person that and so many of them took such pride that they bought that piece of clothing for themselves, even though they were so poor, that they were able to save a few quarters and purchase something that they wanted. It was really dignifying to them. Whereas if she had just been giving free stuff away, people, it's like it kind of kills your soul when you're this welfare case. You just sort of, it's an awful experience.
They have that same philosophy at the store, the thrift store at the senior center, because I've literally, because it happened to be something my wife had donated, we knew of this one lady who came in, and these shoes were brand new, and she looked at them and she's like, "Oh, they fit so good, but I've only got $1." And the lady running the place says, "Well, it's your lucky day because there's a sale right now and you get both of them for $1." I thought she was gonna have to decide between them.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
But I mean, but even there, it's like even just giving that $1 is so wonderful because she paid for those shoes, and there's a special ownership with that. So that's just a side note. I don't want to get too far into it, but it's kind of interesting.
You also find that when something is for free, the person receiving it doesn't value it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
if it's free,
appreciate
it
it.
has no value. So to elicit anything from them, it brings value to what they're getting.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Absolutely. And there's another side economic lesson. Maybe we should go to a flat tax of 20% and just call it a day, and instead of everything else. But that's a side thing. We can.
Mm.
All right, let's pick it up there. Jack, you want to read the next paragraph here? 27. You want to take it down to the end to 31.
Okay. Thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they gained possessions in it and were faithful and multiplied greatly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the days of Jacob, the years of his life, were 147. And when the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "If now I have found favor in your sight, put your hand under my thigh and promise to deal kindly and truly with me. Do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. Carry me out of Egypt and bury me in the burying place." He answered, "I will do as you have said." And he said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. Then Israel bowed himself upon the head of his bed.
Okay. All right. So now we have Israel settled in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen. So Israel settles in the land, and what does it say about them?
They were prosperous, fruitful, and multiplied greatly.
Multiplied. Mm.
Yes, let's talk about that for a second. So it says about them specifically, and again, it kind of reiterates the point that we've been making of how they are different from how they're being treated differently from the Egyptians. They, unlike what we just read, where the Egyptians, the rest of the world is had to give up their possessions in order to live. They gained possessions during this time. The economy was good to them at this time, unlike the Egyptians. So there's some distinctions going on here. And what else are we told about them is they multiplied greatly. They were, actually, it says they were, what does it say?
Fruitful and multiplied greatly.
Fruitful. Where have we heard that phrase before? Fruitful and multiply.
And God told Adam and Eve to go forth.
At the beginning.
First commandment given to man is
Mm.
be fruitful and multiply. It's also what was told to Noah in after the flood. First commandment is be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and possess it. This constant command. So here's Israel. Actually, now it says they are being fruitful and multiplying. There's obedience there to God, at least in that regard, and that's the nature of the gospel. It's one of life and reproduction. It's being fruitful and multiplying. And you can see that the work of the devil is always toward the opposite of that. It's like, no, don't be fruitful. Children are a burden. Children are not something you want right now. And so, that was the most distressing thing watching the Democratic National Convention this past week. What was outside? Do you remember? Did you see what was outside?
Abortion clinics and vasectomy clinics.
They were offering free abortions and free vasectomies. You can see the complete this is like the devil's convention. It's like it's one of, they're killing the fruit of the womb and then making it impossible for men to plant seeds and to multiply. It's like this war on kids, as if kids are a curse in some way. And it's like God's ways are like, no, it's the kingdom of God is always about being fruitful, multiplying, expanding, filling the earth, and the devil always want to shrink it down and make it smaller and bring death and sterility and that kind of thing. And this is like we can see that Israel, at least right now, is in a good place. It's like a seed planted now it's going to begin to grow and bear fruit, and it's a good start for them. After all they've been through, they've been redeemed. It's like they've been planted in Egypt now, and things are starting to grow and be fruitful, which is wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. So things are looking good. Jacob lives how many years? Jacob
147.
lives
17.
another 17 years in Egypt and dies at the age of 147, which is that's a good year. Again, showing this is a sign of God's blessing. Long life is a sign of God's blessing. Remember in the genealogies at the beginning of Genesis, and one of the things that in the line of Seth, they emphasize the age of these guys and how long they lived, 900 years, 800 years, such long life, emphasizing they all died, but there was clearly God's blessing upon them and that they were able to live for long periods of time. So that's one of the signs of God's blessing is long life. And so Jacob dies as one who is blessed by God. In fact, it doesn't refer, how does it refer to him at the end of his life here? It drew near for him, and you'll notice it says it's at that time that it was time for Israel must die. What's the significance of Israel? I thought he was Jacob. Why is he called Israel here?
That's his covenant name.
Yeah. Again, every time you see that Israel, so you're reminding of that covenant that God made with Jacob. That was his covenant name, and you're reminded of the promises. I will bless you. You'll have many descendants, and I will give you that land. And you'll notice that you can feel the blessing, and you can see all his descendants now, that whole family, 70 of them now. But one thing's missing. What was the third? There were three parts of the promise.
Land.
Yeah, the promised land.
They're not in the promised land. And this is where, this is interesting. This is the evidence, according to the book of Hebrews, of Jacob's faith, this scene. Of all the things that Jacob did in all of his life, in the book of Hebrews, in that, remember that chapter 11, the Hall of Faith, the ones where the example after example.
Right.
The example for Jacob is, Jacob's faith is seen in this scene where he leaned on his staff and blessed his sons, and he just, this scene of him leaning on his staff, he says that's Jacob's faith. And how is this faith? Well, let's talk about it.
Because he believes that he'll be brought back to the land that was promised.
Yes. This is a great example of faith, because it shows a couple things. Jacob does not see Egypt as his home, even though he's living well, even though this is his best life. Right? This is his best life now. He's got it going. He's got everything's moving. His favorite son's alive. He sees his grandchildren and probably great-grandchildren too, and maybe even beyond that. They're living in luxury. Everything's great. He can go to the Lord in peace. His struggles are over. Everything's great, but it's like, this is not my home. Don't bury me in Egypt. And he makes him swear. And he commands Joseph to do what?
Bring him the promised land at some point.
Carry him home.
Bury him with his fathers.
Put his hand under his thigh.
To carry me out of Egypt and bury me with my fathers in Canaan. That's his land. So that's the faith of Jacob. It's like he is fixated on the promised land, not his present place right now, but where God has promised them. And that's a sign That's where I'm going to be. I will be raised again. And that's the land that God has promised me and our family. So, and Joseph will do that and when he dies, Joseph will bring his body to another big processional, and they'll bury him in Canaan. What is it about we've seen that before, about the putting your hand under my thigh?
Hmm.
What's the meaning of that one? I know we've seen that before. Didn't Abraham's servant do that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's how you lift somebody up onto either a horse or a carriage or something like that. Someone that doesn't have their own strength, you need to put your hand under their thigh to lift them.
Oh, that's what it means? Is that the symbolism of that?
well, it seems like it's just like raise your right hand. In the culture, you put your hand under your thigh to do the same thing.
Okay, see note on 24:9. Let me see if I got a note on this real quick. Genesis 24:9 is when we saw it before. When Abraham's servant puts his hand under his thigh and promises to bring back a wife for so it says, since striking one's thigh was possibly understood as a sign of remorse and submission, the placing of one's hand under the thigh of another may have indicated submission to that person's strength and authority. In any case, by undertaking this action, the servant binds himself to obey Abraham's request. So it sounds like the scholars are not exactly sure the meaning of it. They're giving some thoughts and suggestions of what it could mean. But it is clearly that he is sealing that promise. He's going to do that for him.
So who the guy? My brain is dead here. The cult guy. Who's my your best life now? What's the name of the guy?
Joel Osteen, yeah.
Oh, Osteen. So I guess he's promising Egypt that this is your best life now.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, he kind of, yeah.
I have to tell you, I Googled the symbolism of placing your hand under someone's thigh, and AI gave me an answer.
All right.
And it says, in ancient Hebrew culture, placing a hand under someone's thigh had a symbolic meaning. The thigh was considered the source of posterity or the testicles. And the phrase under the thigh could be a euphemism for on the loins. So you
There
get
you
some
go.
the leg.
That's pretty personal. Okay.
Yep.
Jack, I'll just take your word for it. You don't have to put your hand under my thigh.
So I don't think we're going to take up that custom then. We're going to move
Up
on.
to 10 fingers, Rob.
I don't like AI.
All right. Good. All right. Well, let's keep going here. We're in Genesis 48 now. And we're going to take a look. Now, another scene is we kind of have this closure to Jacob's life, but he's still alive and he's got some things to do left. And the next is a really interesting scene with Joseph's boys, Ephraim and Manasseh, and how that goes. So let's take a look at that. Where we leave off here. Rob, Roy, you want to read the next paragraph for us here, verses 1 to 7?
48, 1 to 7. Okay. After this, Joseph was told, behold, your father is ill. So he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And it was told to Jacob, your son Joseph has come to you. Then Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me and said to me, behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make of you a company of peoples, and will give this land to your offspring after you for an everlasting possession. And now your two sons, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. And the children that you fathered after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. As for me, when I came from Padan, to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath. And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem.
Okay. All right. So Joseph is told your father is ill, and so he's about to die. So Joseph is told of Jacob's impending death. So what does he do? What does Joseph do? At that point, he hears the news. Your dad is sick.
Yeah.
No, it takes his two sons to
Yeah.
Jacob and goes to see Jacob.
So Joseph takes his two sons to Jacob. I mean, this is one of those things of, I mean, what is he, why does he do that? Why does he bring his two sons with him?
Get them blessed by his father.
Yeah, he's seeking a blessing. Okay, from dad, from his father. Okay. Israel summons his strength, sat up in the bed again, and he says to Joseph, he reminds now Joseph. So Jacob or Israel, first he does what in verses 4 and verse 4. Let's start with that. Verses 3 and 4. What is he talking about there?
He's talking about the promise to him from God.
Yeah, he recounts the promise. This promise that it defines everything for us. That promise that was given to Abraham, again to Isaac, and again to Jacob, recounts the promise, which is what?
Be fruitful and multiply.
That they'll
Yeah.
possess the promised land.
Yeah, but he said the promise is this of the Lord. The Lord will make him fruitful and multiply him, a great company of people, and what else?
The land will be their possession forever, everlasting, forever.
The Lord will give me, right, will give this land, which is the Canaan land, to your offspring. So it's an everlasting home. So it's a home and a family. An eternal home and an eternal family he's giving him.
And the world will be blessed by you.
Yeah, he doesn't mention the last part about it, but
Yeah.
he reiterates that part. So we have the two parts of the promise here, the home and the family, and then the blessing is not mentioned here, but that's along with it. And now he says something about the two sons of Jacob. So what is Jacob doing here? What is he saying in verse 5 when he says, your two sons are mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are mine? What's going on there?
He's taken ownership of the two sons.
Yeah, so Jacob is at this point, he is taking Ephraim and Manasseh as his sons.
Is this because he knows that they're not born of the family? You know, he's actually taken them from an Egyptian wife.
No, that's not the case here. That's not what's happening. It's something else.
Those so far weren't Egyptian Israelites either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with the Egyptian part of it.
It's setting up another great story of grace, because the younger here is going to be blessed.
Yeah,
It's
what's the
a-
significance of this? Is what's interesting. It's an interesting situation here because it's this is called this is the double portion of the inheritance that is given to the oldest son. So when you had an inheritance and you divided among your kids, the oldest son would get a double portion. So if there's 3 sons, you divide it into 4 parts and you give 2 parts to the oldest and 1 part to the other 2. So no matter how it worked out, the oldest would get a double portion of it. The inheritance that Jacob is giving to Joseph is not money. It's the promise. That's his inheritance. The land of Canaan is his inheritance. And he's giving to Joseph now. He is saying, I'm going to give you the double portion. Because now Joseph is not going to be one tribe in Israel. He's going to be two. That's why there is no tribe of Joseph. There's a tribe of Ephraim and there's a tribe of Manasseh. And they get a double, that's the double portion for Joseph, if that makes sense here. So you have the 12 brothers, and you have this breakdown now so that they inherit the land. And what's really interesting is how should I put it here? So we have there's three different ways you can talk about the sons of Jacob. We can talk about the 12 sons of Jacob. It's going to draw this out here. Let's see if you can remember what they are. There's Reuben, Levi,
Simeon. Oh,
yeah, Simeon,
Judah,
Gad,
Gad,
Naphtali, Asher,
Naphtali.
Naphtali.
Ham,
Not Ham. No, that was the sons of Noah.
Wait,
Zebulun,
Zebulun,
Dan, Joseph, Benjamin. Making it up here at this point. 1, 2, 3. How many is that? I'm missing one. Who are we missing?
Hold on a second. I gotta.
Zebulun, Dan, Joseph. Issachar.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. So those are your 12 sons of Jacob. Okay. That's one way it's divided into 12. Now we'll talk about the 12 tribes of Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a different list.
Right, because Joseph is going to be dead. And they're going to divide it amongst his two sons.
In the 12 tribes of Jacob, you have this list again. Okay. But instead of Joseph, you have Ephraim,
Manasseh.
Manasseh. However,
Levi is out because they're
the
priests.
Yeah.
Levi is out because they're priests. Correct. Okay. Then you have sort of the lands, the 12 lands of Israel. And we have that same list, except there's one other name that's lost in that. If you know which one it is.
Simeon.
Simeon is lost. Simeon, remember, Simeon and Levi do not get to inherit land because of the wickedness that they did with that whole diamond incident. You remember that?
Yeah, so he gets taken, I think, by Judah, right? He gets kind of.
Nope.
Not-
It actually becomes East Manasseh and West Manasseh.
Okay.
Manasseh ends up on both sides of the Jordan River. So however you slice it, you get 12. And it's interesting that Joseph's oldest son would get a double portion of the land there. But the point of the whole story is that Joseph, in this point, is being set aside now. He is going to get the double portion. He is the one who is sort of receiving that inheritance from the father. He gets the two tribes there. And so he says, they're going to be my sons. They're going to take your inheritance. You will look to your basically grandkids will be, you can give them your inheritance can go to them. These boys are going to be getting my inheritance. So that's the significance. And again, the wonder of it, it continues along with the promise. Jacob's inheritance is not all his flocks and herds and all the wealth he's gathered. It's the promise. That's the inheritance of Jacob, which is why I think, for example, Esau despised the promise. He didn't want his inheritance because it's not something he could enjoy right now. It's something part of a long distance. Who wants this? I mean, goodness, like, fine. Your inheritance is something you won't see in this lifetime. Thanks, Dad. In 1,000 years, there's going to be a plot of land in Scotland with your name on it. That's my inheritance to you. Like, can I have $10 instead? That would be preferable here. Can I have a bowl of soup, maybe? It's just, you can see where this is real faith. This is real faith as they're looking the farthest in future. All right. So, any question on that part here? That's I want to make sure we get a sense of what's going on there.
I guess it's Jacob once again demonstrating faith.
Yes.
Looking downrange, said, take my bones there, and I'm already planning the setup of how the inheritance will be played up and divided up. So,
yeah, Jacob's faith is on display here. We see his hope is in his eternal possession. God's that everlasting is in his eternal possession. And as for this life, what does he say about his life here? Last thing he says about in verse 7. As for me, his present life is one of sorrow.
Yeah.
He reminds Joseph of his mother's death in the land of Canaan away. Great sorrow for Jacob. Great sorrow. And buries her in Bethlehem. So there's his faith. It's like this, his present life is full of sorrow. His hope is in his eternal inheritance, the promise that God gave him. That's what faith is, isn't it? Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. It regardless of the present circumstances. And that's what we see in Jacob. So let's see how we're doing here. 3:10. We can continue a little bit if you'd like. Let's read a little bit more here. Where we leave off. Bob Fowler, you want to get the next paragraph there for us? Bob?
Beginning with verse 8?
Begin verse 8. Yeah.
Okay. When Israel saw Joseph's son, he said, "Who are these?" Joseph said to his father, "These are my sons whom God has given me here." And he said, "Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face, and behold, God has let me see your offspring also." Then Joseph removed them from his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand towards his right hand, and brought them near him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands. Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys, and let them, and in them let my name be carried on, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth.
Okay. All right, let's go through this here. So Joseph now brings his sons to Jacob for a blessing. And how does Joseph do it?
He blesses the right hand, which is the chief blessing, is on the younger one, not the older one. Ephraim.
Yeah.
The younger will serve the older.
Yeah. Sounds familiar. This story rings a bell, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What does it say about Jacob's condition at this time?
He's blind. He can't really see talking to.
Yeah, Jacob's eyes are dim. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah,
When have we heard that before?
all we need is some sheepskin.
Who
Like
was Isaac?
Like Isaac. And he's dim with age, but he's not like Isaac at this scene because he is of full mind. He is not delusioned. He is not deceived. He is not in a bad place like Isaac was, ready to bless the wrong person, and has to be fooled into doing the right thing. Jacob's blind, and so Joseph brings them near, and so Joseph is kind of finagling this. He kissed him, embraced him, and how does Joseph present the boys to Jacob?
Puts the firstborn in front of his right hand and the secondborn in front of his left hand.
He brings Manasseh, the oldest, to Jacob's right hand, which is how it's supposed to be, right? And Ephraim to the left. And what does Jacob do at that point?
He crosses his arms.
Jacob crosses his arms. And Joseph's response to that. How does Joseph respond?
Wait, you're talking about
Oh, we
verse
haven't
7.
done that yet. Oh,
Yeah,
no,
we
no, my mind. We haven't gotten there yet. We haven't gotten there yet. I thought we had gotten there already. So Jacob crosses his arms, and blesses Ephraim, the younger, with his right hand. Okay. And then he blessed Joseph, and here is Jacob's blessing. What does he say? This is an interesting blessing. Pull it down a little bit here. Oops, sorry. Lost it. Oh. Okay. All right, so Jacob's blessing. What does Jacob say?
Let my name be carried on.
Well, let's start with this. He invokes God. And how does he describe God?
That he was before everything, before his fathers.
He has been the shepherd all of his life.
So he describes him as first. Let me find a better thing here in a second.
They walk before God.
All right, the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna start with that. He invokes God, the God of Abraham
And Isaac.
Okay, we're gonna start there. So he's calling on the name of the Lord, the God of Abraham and Isaac, and then he says he is the God who's also been what?
My shepherd.
My life.
The God who has been my shepherd.
My shepherd throughout life.
Beautiful, huh? The
Mhm.
Lord is my shepherd, right? All my life. And then he adds another one.
Angel who has redeemed me from all evil.
The angel who has redeemed me. That's peculiar.
Mm.
Is that the angel of the Lord he's kind of speaking of?
The angel of the Lord. What is when he says angel? What does angel mean again?
Messenger.
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 Mess.
The one sent. So we talked about that before, about the visible and the invisible God. That the scenes of Jacob's life, you remember that. How many times he dealt with angels?
Mm.
In particular, what angel do you think he has in mind here? When
He's
he
talking about Jesus.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Jesus in a second, but you
Mm.
remember the angel where he wrestles with the angel
Up at Bethel.
at Bethel, right? And he says, and basically he says, who are you that I may, basically he speaks about to the angel, says, would you I won't let you go until you bless me. And he says, your name will be Israel now. The angel renames him. And then he says, what is your name? And the angel says, why do you ask me my name? Basically, and he leaves him. So he gives him, angels will tell you their names.
I thought the angel was God.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. It's like the angel is someone who is God, but who's also sent by God. That's the mystery of it. It's like the Lord, that he's an angel means he's been sent by the Lord. But then the one who's sent by the Lord is also called the Lord. And so how do you explain that? You have, again, in the book of Genesis, you have this mystery of, there are some times when God is invisible and he's above it all, and he is in the heavens and he's dealing with us. He speaks creation and all those other things. And then you have God who comes in a physical way. The Lord comes in flesh so that he can wrestle with you and put your hip out of joint, that he can eat bread with you and a meal with you as he does with Abraham, and he's still called the Lord. And so you have these two gods, in a sense, the visible one and the invisible one. And how do you make sense of this? And just think about it as a Jew reading this. How do you, they don't understand the doctrine of the Trinity. How do you understand this? Teresa, you're going to say something, sorry.
I was going to say, isn't the Lord Jesus?
Yes. We'd say that this is the Father and the Son. The Son is the visible image of the invisible God. And so even in these stories that he invokes this threefold name of God, the God of Abraham and Isaac, the God who's been my shepherd, the angel who's redeemed me from all evil. But again, that phrase of the God, and then the angel. So you have these two that are given sort of equal standing, the God and the angel who's redeemed me. So it's really interesting. Very, very interesting.
Christophanies are always mysterious.
Yeah. And
That's
so this,
Christ.
yeah, I think in the New Testament, we have some clear doctrine about it. We have a clear presentation of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. In the Old Testament, it's mysterious. It's there, but it's not clearly proclaimed. It's present in so many ways, from the creation of man, where God creates us male and female in his image. Why create a family in the image of God? There's got to be more than one person there if that's going to reflect God. Why did we have a passage like this? Why do we have a psalm that says, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand? What is this? Two lords? And there's another psalm that has two gods that are mentioned. God, your God, will, exalt you above others. So it's just, it's mysterious when all you have is the Old Testament. With the New Testament, we have some clarity. This is the Father and the Son. And so even Jacob has some understanding of it, though it's not completely clear. All right, let's just finish up the blessing and then we'll close it out. So he says, he invokes God, and then his blessing is, may this God do what?
Bless the two boys.
Yeah, may he bless the boys and let my name be carried on.
In the names of my fathers.
And let them go into multitude in the midst of the earth. Okay. Multitude in the midst. And it's interesting, they kind of, if you look at the map of Israel and their allotments and the land that they inherited, Ephraim and Manasseh are like right in the middle of Israel, those tribes, and they become a great multitude of in the midst. Okay. So anyway, that's a little bit there. We'll finish up this story next time as we'll take a look at Joseph's objection to that and Jacob's explanation. So
I think it's important to remember that Christ is eternal. Sometimes you see in very young Christians, they actually will think that Christ, the first time he shows up, is when he's born in Bethlehem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's when he put on human flesh. He has always existed. So you
Yeah.
get these pictures of Christ showing up in the Old Testament. Some people would say Melchizedek was a Christophany, a picture of Christ. And in this passage here, he shows up. He shows up sometimes as the angel of the Lord.
Yeah.
And
that's great. I think that's really important. You're absolutely right. Is that we're not, Christianity is not some new religion that just appears. It's like the flower that appears from the stem. So like the Old Testament is like the stem of the flower, and then when Christ appears, it's like there's the flower. It's beautiful. It's clear. It's not just this flower head that just appears out of nowhere. It's all connected, and you see him from the very beginning. You can see the promises in the Christ, which is why I think that Hebrews speaks of Moses as a Christian. That he left all things in Egypt for the sake of Christ. Even though it doesn't say for the sake of Jesus, but for the sake of Christ, because the difference is in the Old Testament is they knew the Christ is coming and they believed in the Christ. They just didn't know his name yet. Know that it was Jesus of Nazareth. He hadn't been born yet, but they put their hope in the promise that God made from the very beginning, that the son of the woman would crush the head of the serpent. The Christ will come. And a prophet like Moses and the son of David and the son of Abraham. It was all there. And they just needed to put the name to it. But their hope was in that. So
when they say Christophany, or sometimes I would say theophany, that word ophany means appearance of.
Yeah.
So it's the appearance of Christ and a Christophany, appearance of God and theophany.
Yeah. And this is as a point of semantics, just as it's a little bug, it's just a little thing. But when we talk about these scenes, I don't say that's Jesus. I say that's the Son. He hasn't become Jesus yet.
Right.
He'll become Jesus. Right now, he's the Son. Right now, he is the eternal Son of God appearing. He will be called Jesus when he's born. That's how we'll know him by name. But right now, in these scenes, he is the Son that's appearing. So, all right, let's stop it right there.